moving forward, notwithstanding. For example, in 2006, we had a total of 48 full-time equivalent employees, 35 full-timers. Hopping ahead, I've had to lay off a number of folks directly and personally. I'm sure those in business know that that's one of the harder things to do. The only people it's harder for are the ones on the other side of the desk. But we've gone from, a lot of this was done through attrition. We were able to sustain flat budgets by allowing the staffing numbers and trying to take care of other expenditures. That's where we were making up the difference. But again, last year, this year, I've laid off 10 full-time employees between the 2 years and a large number of part-time people making up full-time equivalents. So very quickly, our personnel wage and salaries was about $2.3 million in 2006. This year it's 1.2. The total wage and salary line goes from 2.9 to 2.1, but remember 220,000 of that is of no value to anyone. It's unemployment costs and an additional 224,000 pension costs. You can begin to see what's happening. Part of the point of my little talk today is I'm someone who's always increased library hours wherever I've been, and I've tried to increase the hours at times when normal people could use the library. Most people aren't available to use the library on a 9 to 5 basis, so we've always tried to increase the weekend hours, Saturdays, Sundays, Friday evenings, and try to spend more money on materials. We really are up against it this year between the $1.2, $1.3 million reduction in allocation and some of the cost drivers I've mentioned. We've had to reduce the main library hours to about 50 hours a week, which meets the state minimum requirement for state certification for state aid. And I'm sure most of you know that we've had to at least temporarily close the Bellevue Avenue Library branch. Whereas the main library had been open about 64 hours a week, it's now open 50, which is the state minimum. And the Bellevue Avenue branch is currently closed. But we're
It's
looking,
short-sighted though, isn't it?
well, there's no choice really. The next stage, let me say this. In 1997, the town invested in the main library facility, increasing it from about 33,000 square feet to about 55,000 square feet. The Bellevue Avenue branch adds about 4,000 or 5,000 square feet to that total. The main library in Montclair is one of the, by my readings on stats, it's about the 5th largest municipal library in the state of New Jersey. Now the community invested in that facility and has maintained the Bellevue Avenue branch, but there's a commensurate cost with a facility of that size. It just costs a certain amount to utilities, or a number I didn't mention, about $200,000 for the main library. But there are staffing costs. It's on 3 floors. It's not a one-story building, which is what I usually try to recommend for new construction. It's easier to staff. It requires less staffing. So the municipality matched up the capital investment with operational monies accordingly. Montclair, to be clear, up until this year, last year, has been one of the best funded libraries in the state of New Jersey. Now going to the Bellevue Avenue branch question, we can no longer effectively sustain the main library in the branch with the allocation and the costs that we have. There's about a $300,000 shortfall. The next unfortunate step would be to limit public access to the 3rd floor of the main library. We're hoping to avoid that. But the question on the Bellevue branch is it short-sighted? It certainly is. From a lot of perspectives, we continue to retain the building under library control. We haven't turned it back to the town, which is an option. And I leave folks to draw their own conclusions on how well the township might maintain and make use of that building. But for example, as we contract Bellevue Avenue branch, perhaps the 3rd floor of the main library, none of this is desirable. We are looking and have received private funding from the Montclair Public Library Foundation, and that's basically funneling private monies. We're hoping, planning, I've committed to reopening the Bellevue Avenue branch on June 6th. So again, it'll be open 1 day a week, 10 hours a day. The way we're able to do that is through investing in technology. Folks may or may not be aware of self-check machinery. It allows people to put their library card on a machine and check material out directly. That allows reduced staffing, installing a security system out there, and we are going to be able to try to peel off one professional librarian as a core staffer for that day, and we're really going to be relying on community volunteers to supplement that staffing. So that's the best use we can make of that building. It's kind of a tripod. In as much as we are paying the facility costs, that is, we aren't going to let it run down. We continue security costs, utilities. Bellevue Avenue branch, the main library we hope to reopen on Sunday, May 1st. Again, $50,000 funneled through the foundation. It's not uncommon for libraries to be open on Sundays using private monies. The Montclair Public Library had been open in previous years on Sundays based on donations from the then existing Friends group. Sundays are a bit of an outlier because although to me it's the most important day, it's when we see the heaviest usage, it's when people can get out there, but it's not part of the staff rotation. We do have people going through on Saturdays, but Sundays are an add-on that's a time and a half overtime cost we can't really sustain. So what are we doing about the current situation? As usual, making the case with the town council. Again, we're structurally, I make it up to be about $200,000 or $300,000 under the bare minimum to keep both facilities, or certainly minimally the main library open. The other thing I've always tried to do as a director has been to increase money for library materials, which remains, although computers have added on, we have many add-ons, programs, community spaces. To me, materials, that is books, DVDs, audiobooks, the materials, reference material, that's going more and more online, and databases, which are high information quality, structured sources of information online, remain at the core of the library experience or the library purpose. Unfortunately, if you look at the numbers, you can see materials going from about $400,000, notwithstanding we bumped it up to about $417,000. This year we've had to really drastically slash materials to kind of a bare placeholding bridge of about $77,000. We're looking for the community for about $300,000 in private donations to provide for materials for the library system. This is not a unique model. It's unusual. Princeton Public Library functions that way. They have a somewhat larger building, but they take their operational monies, their public monies are operational, that is for utilities, for staffing costs. They raise about $400,000 or $500,000 for materials, for technology, and for staff development. We're moving towards that model. The library is going to begin a strategic plan with the assistance of the Princeton Public Library Director. She's the former director of the American